I played this level a lot, usually with the commentary off, or me actively ignoring Davey and not pressing the enter key. It's possible to get up there, it takes about 5 minutes to do it. And here's one thing that I tried doing. While playing this level, I came up with what I thought was a neat little idea for a creative work, putting myself in Coda's shoes. I know I'm making an assumption here that that's what Coda did, that he played the game when he had an idea and climbed the stairs when he wanted to put it in the room. But I think that it's a safe one to make. Remember, he wasn't planning on showing this game to anyone. The game was made for him and him alone, and you can write your ideas down on a notepad. So I climbed the stairs with this idea. It forced me to really think about the idea, to think it was valuable enough to put in this room. I mean, the level looks boring, and climbing these stairs are tedious as hell. Any idea that's going to be put in this room is going to have 5 minutes of thorough thinking about nothing else but the idea. Right now, I could be doing something better with my time than just climbing these slow-ass stairs. Is this idea worth it? But here's the real kicker. We play a lot of Coda's future games, and none of these ideas come up once. Davey even says this.
I wish I'd known him at the time that he was making these early games. He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, that was it. It was dead to him.
It makes me think that these aren't ideas of the future, they're ideas of the past. Think about it. The climb could be Coda debating whether or not to keep this idea, having time to debate its merits, and see if he really wants to give it up, and to essentially place the idea in a grave. I mean, as some of these ideas are really cool, some of them are utterly ridiculous and probably shouldn't be acted on. But like I said, in creative works, we see a lot more of ourselves than other people. What I said about this level, it's me projecting my own thoughts, as I frequently take on ideas that don't pan out. Actually, stopping to think about all the ideas that might seem crazy and cool at first might save me a lot of strife at first. And I drop ideas in projects too quickly. Actually having a slow climb to wrestle with it would probably do me a lot of good. This has nothing at all to do with Coda. I don't know Coda, even within the context of the game. And what Davey says about the climb,
Coda would often tell me that he didn't mind if people thought of him as cold or distant. He said that he knew that he was actually a vibrant and compassionate person, but that it takes time to really see that. It can be a very slow climb to get there.
Says more about his perceptions of himself than anything about Coda. And speaking of projection, this line hit me particularly hard.
Once he stopped work on a game, that was it. It was dead to him.
That is me. That is literally me, but not by choice. In fact, that line combined with some of Davey's lines about the prison games.
For some reason, Coda gets really fixated on this prison that has all of this modern furniture. Let me just blink you real quick through a few more of these. I mean, he really unloaded on this prison idea. There's nearly a dozen of them. Personally, I think it's awful to watch this, to see a person basically unraveling through their work. And for what? At what point do you just go, maybe there are game ideas other than this prison that I could be working on? But Coda doesn't have that voice telling you to stop. That particular mechanism of defense against yourself.
Made me think that Coda was legitly suffering from Asperger's syndrome, and the islands only cemented it further. That's what Asperger's does. It's a symptom that I've been struggling with lately. It forces you to work on the same thing or project over and over and over again, for no real reason, until it makes you focus on something else, and that old thing becomes dead to you. Once again though, that's about me, and not about Coda.
But it's ironic, isn't it, that in playing this game and seeing how alone Coda often felt, that we get to know him better and actually kind of connect with him. And I have to be honest with you, this idea is really seductive to me, that I could just play someone's game and see the voices in their head and get to know them better and have to do less of the messy in-person socializing. I could just get to know you through your work.
Except this game tells us nothing about who Coda really is. Except that, assuming that Coda really did write all these notes himself, he has a really good grasp on random forum internet comments. Seriously, these are pretty damn spot on. You could probably find some comments on this very video that look exactly like the one shown here. All that's missing is a bunch of firsts in the entryway. But it tells us nothing about Coda, in the same way that random NPCs in an RPG tell us nothing about the designers of those games, maybe excepting their technical or grammatical skills. We know nothing about Coda. In fact, we don't even know if Coda is a man or a woman. I've been referring to Coda as a he this whole time because Davey has, but in the machine, you are referred to as a woman and you are playing in the first person. Almost every pronoun that doesn't come from Davey is feminine. The only model that actually has a head is a female one. You frequently hear female whispering, and in Escape from Whisper, a custom voice for this specific game that Coda wasn't planning on showing anyone was a female's voice. The only thing that really suggests that Coda is male is, well, Davy, the unreliable narrator. This doesn't point to Coda being female either. I mean, I personally prefer to write female characters, and I also sometimes play as female characters in video games, even ones that I design by choice. That doesn't make me a woman, or even want to be a woman. Coda could have gotten someone else to voice Escape from Whisper. I mean, Coda did eventually tell someone about their games. Why should we assume that Davy was the only one who got his hands on Coda's games? And even though Davy lies a lot, why the hell would he lie about Coda's gender? I mean, calling Coda male, if he's not, doesn't really do anything for Davy's interpretations. In fact, it kinda really damages Davy's interpretations, or at least his credibility. I mean, another alternative is that Davy had never actually met Coda in real life, and doesn't actually know Coda's gender at all, and this Sacramento Game Jam thing is just another crazy lie. I mean, Davy could just be a cyberstalker or an internet fan that got a little too clingy. He certainly acts like one at the end of the game.
Please, I need to feel okay with myself again, and I always felt okay as long as I had your work to see myself in. Can I apologize? What if I tell you I was wrong? Will that work? Will that fix it? I don't know. I don't think it will, but there's nothing else that I can do. Just tell me what you want. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please.
Believe me, I've dealt with people who sound exactly like that. I mean, Davy really only goes into 2 direct interactions that Coda went out of his way to have with Davy. One of them is sending Davy hundreds of games where you walk around in a box to be sarcastic. Then again, I don't think that Davy actually likes Coda at all, and misgendering Coda may just be another insult. In hindsight, a lot of what Davy says reeks of resentment. There seems to be a lot of bitterness, but most of all, there seems to be a lot of jealousy. Davy seems to really like Coda's work, and he even says lines like this.
Start making games again. Please help me. Please give me some of whatever it is that makes you complete. I want whatever that wholeness is that you just summoned out of nothing and you put into your work. You were complete in some way that I never was. And I want to know how to be a good person. I want to know how not to hate myself. Please.
And it gets to a point where he does really start complimenting them. But throughout the whole game, Davy actually does not say one positive thing towards Coda as a person, besides calling him his friend. The closest thing is here, where Davy says this. But this is what Coda says about himself, according to Davy. That's not what Davy himself says about Coda. Here are the kinds of things that Davy does say about Coda.
And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. It kinda looks like this game was abandoned mid-development. But ultimately, we don't really know. Maybe Coda thought that actually it was complete the way that it is. He went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games that was full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Either way, to me, they convey a sense of loneliness. I see this person who's filled with thoughts and feelings and beliefs and has no way to express them except as scattered and unheard voices in a game that wasn't meant to be played. That in playing this game and seeing how alone Coda often felt, personally, I think it's awful to watch this, to see a person basically unraveling through their work. And so this is what Coda wants, is to be able to talk to someone, to share what's on his mind, and to get some good advice from someone who knows. But the irony is that even in this scenario, you're still talking to yourself. You know, all of these games so far are Coda talking to himself. And to be honest, I didn't consider it very healthy when I first played this game. You know, it looked to me like he was trying to justify the idea of just disconnecting yourself from the world. Not like he's having trouble iterating on ideas, but he literally just can't think of new ideas anymore. And in person, he was being a lot more distant than usual.
They don't paint a positive picture of this character, and it's hard to say that they were ever even friends at any point in their lives. Sure, Davy calls Coda a friend, but Davy never talks about a single positive interaction. He just downplays the negative aspects of it and finds it quirky or charming, through tone.
Coda would often tell me that he didn't mind if people thought of him as cold or distant.
This line is really fascinating. I could imagine this line coming up during a fight. I can see Davy telling Coda that he's cold and distant if he just won't open up to being bothered all the time. Coda just says that he doesn't care if people found him distant and cold. He said this often, apparently. At one point, Davy talks about a moment where Coda sent him hundreds of walking box games, in what appears to be a very snide attempt just to be sarcastic. It's a very weird friendship for someone to spend hours or even days just to be sarcastic to someone. On top of that, games like The Tower, which is a very apparent fuck you to Davey, it's stated that took like 7 months. You don't spend 7 months trying to build one project for a giant fuck you to one person, unless they are really bothering you. On top of all this, Davey seems to only value Coda for the works that he can interpret something out of, and it seems like the penultimate level of the game really seems to showcase this. There are many times in the beginner's guide where Davey just shows a callous lack of respect for Coda's work. I mean, one of the biggest mysteries of this game is just how much Davey has been editing all the games. Sometimes it's obvious. Davey flat out tells you that he edited the house cleaning game. The lamppost wasn't originally there, and the game continued forever. And honestly, playing through a second time, you can tell. Besides the conversation cutting off in mid-sentence, the area where the lamppost resides is basically unfinished in contrast to the very detailed rest of the level.
And to be fair, it's not like this is the first game that's needed some modification to be playable.
Davey's word choice when revealing this lie in my first playthrough was the biggest red flag to the twist. Remember that even in-game, Davey is a game designer, but you don't have to be a designer to know that there's a difference between a game being playable and a game being beatable or having an end state. A game does not need an end state to be playable. I mean, we have a whole genre, sandbox games, that essentially do not end, and they're very playable. Even in games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, whether or not you win or lose, you can keep playing indefinitely. Bejeweled has an endless mode where you can keep playing and the game continues forever. And all of these games are very playable. What is Davey's definition of the word playable? He obviously doesn't mean it in the traditional sense. None of Coda's games are buggy, glitchy messes, for instance. Besides Escape from Whisper, you don't run into a glitch once. And even that might not be a glitch. I mean, you could argue that things like him opening the prison door or skipping over the maze made those two games playable, as those segments test the player's patience. But Davey doesn't bring up those games. He brings up the cleaning game, something that didn't seem to be edited the first time through. Also, according to Davey, this cleaning game made Coda grossly happy, and it was made during a very happy time. If we can trust Davey on this, it sounds like Coda was rather proud of this game, and this is the most obvious example of Davey blatantly editing Coda's games to put whatever he wanted in it, all the while claiming that we should appreciate Coda's work for what it is. That just sounds like a dick move. Also, I remind you that Davey cuts off the conversation during what seems like a very important question that could give some actual real insight. Sometimes, however, Davey's edits are harder to spot. During the islands, for example, you're presented with 3 choices here. The first 2 proclaim deal, but the third one you cannot choose. Pressing 3 forces you to say deal. Did Davey streamline this entire game and any portion of the next one to make it seem more apparent that Coda was depressed or creatively frustrated? It gets to the point where I think that Davey made the "you are exiting" game entirely by himself to state his narrative. I mean, the levels are exactly the same except for one minor tweak, which Davey has proven himself more than capable of doing. I mean, if this level doesn't exist, these 2 levels that are even more similar than all of the other games, even the Endless Prison Escape games, then a lot of Davey's narrative falls apart completely. But all of this is just speculation. And it's not like Davey needs to go to such extreme measures to come up with analysis. Davey brings up the puzzle a lot. He goes on and on about this puzzle, and to his credit, it does appear in a lot of Coda's games. But just because it's in the games, that doesn't mean it has to symbolize anything. I mean, I think a lot of creators do something like this. They come up with the idea of a character or an idea or even a puzzle that they really like. However, the work as a whole they figure just isn't working out. So what they do is take this aspect they like and transplant it into a better work. According to This Game is Connected to the Internet, Coda seems to think that it's at least clever.